Pokemon, and especially in Generation 8 and 9, is looking at the speed and kind of the thresholds that go along with it. Most competitive singles players know that base 100 has been the most important speed threshold in competitive history. It's the most important stat in general, but nowadays, base 100 really isn't as important. And if you look at Generation 8, and this was pointed out in Fall Swipe Gaming's video about base 100, there's only two Mons in OU that are base 100, but I don't think this really matters all that much if you're talking about what defines fast and slow, right? Of course, in past generations, especially like Generation 5 with Perma Rain, um, Perma Sand, for all of that was limited, right? Having stuff like uh, Excadrill and Kingdra, and all the Swift Swimmers and Sandrush in the tier, right? Like that, of course, made the base 100 kind of irrelevant during that time. But the base 100s were still there, right? Like Jirachi was still there, and Manaphy was still there, and Zapdos, of course, was still there. Volcarona was still there, and Salamence, right? Like all of these Pokemon have kind of in multiple generations defined what is fast and what is strong. Um, and so in in those generations, right, like that has been important. And just because only Zapdos and Volcarona are in OU in Generation 8, it doesn't necessarily mean that the base 100 speed threshold isn't important anymore, right? It really matters about not only those mons that are at base 100, but also about the surrounding Pokemon, right? Those who have speed either above or below the threshold. Like, well, how are they affected by being above and below? And so when you look at Generation 8, there are a few mons that are right around this threshold. Tapu Lele and Urshifu are just below. Um, I think at 97 and maybe 97. Well, either way, they're in the 90s, right? And Garchomp is just above at 102. And of course, Garchomp has loved being at 102 for multiple generations. Uh, ever since Gen 4, being able to outspeed Jirachi has been amazing, as well as Zapdos, right? Running, a Sword Stance EQ Stone Edge set. Like, um, this has been such an important threshold for it. But when you look at Generation 8, sure, Garchomp likes outspeeding Volcarona and likes outspeeding Zapdos, but Garchomp in Gen 8 doesn't really run Stone Edge that often, more so running, SD, Scale Shot, Earthquake, and like Fire Fang for Corviknight, right? Like if it runs Stone Edge, then it's completely walled by Corv. Um, not maybe completely walled if it gets like multiple SDs off, but again, how likely you're going to be able to do that with a mon like Weavile, dominating the tier. Um, so anyways, it doesn't really matter too much that it outspeeds Zapdos. Sure, it's a boon, but it isn't really that crazy. And also, Zapdos doesn't always run max speed as well. A lot of times, investing in, uh, HP and defense or special defense, depending on the team. And then, of course, Volcarona matchup. Garchomp's matchup versus Volcarona is good anyways. And if you're using Garchomp to beat Volcarona, you probably want to use Tank Chomp instead, right? You want to invest in that HP and special defense, so then speed doesn't even matter at that point, having base 102 because you're just not really investing in speed. But if you are running, right, like a scale shot set, of course you're going to be max speed anyways. And so yeah, of course having 102 and outspeeding these bonds is important, but it isn't as important as it used to be with being able to outspeed like Salamence and being able to outspeed Jirachi, for example. Like those were such important thresholds to hit, and now, right, sure, it's nice, it's good, but is it that crazy important in Generation 8. Definitely not as much. And then Urshifu and Lele, right? Not to like beat a dead horse, but them having like what if they were to be boosted to 101, sure it would be nice, but it wouldn't be all that amazing, right? Urshifu switches out of Zapdos anyways a lot because it doesn't want to get paralyzed by static, and then and a lot of times it just outspeeds anyways because Zapdos isn't running max speed. Um, and Zapdos really only, although at the same time Zapdos really only runs max speed to outspeed Urshifu if it wants to. Otherwise, of course, it can just invest in some defense, hope for a static, which it should get, right? Based on the odds. And then for Volcarona, again, like Urshifu doesn't really want to flame bodies a factor, right? And also, you know, uh, it doesn't matter if Urshifu gets the hit off first or second on a Volcarona trying to set up, which is what it's trying to do. And so unless like a base Volk wants a Giga Drain on Urshifu, which doesn't even KO from full, like that isn't really super likely to happen. As well as like, okay, if we have Urshifu, Scarf Urshifu versus a +1 Volcarona, okay, that would be nice to outspeed with Scarf sets, so that would be a little bit of a boon. But again, not all that crazy. And again, Lele's a similar story. So the point of this is like the things that happen around base 100 aren't that important. So where is that importance? Like where does that split happen? Um, and I really think the split happens at 110. I don't know, like something around like when you're in game and you are base 110, like the max speed you can get at level 100 is 350. And so, just based on gameplay, right? Like when you have a mon above 350, Greninja, Cinderace, Tapu Koko, um, Weavile, like Zeraora, these are like, I know some of those are a lot faster than 110, but they're like fast. I think it comes down to play style, right? Because Kartana is base 109, right? 348 speed with max speed timid at level 100. And it's like, in terms of play style, Cart isn't really like revenge killing these fast mons, Like the only mon it's really revenge killing is like Blacephalon at 107 speed, and then like Urshifu and Lele, right? Like these are the slow and like, but I think Cart more so than that really likes to come in on slower mons. Especially, of course it runs Choice Scarf like 50% of the time because it's going to want to come in and knock out like Dragapult, right? With a knockoff or something. It needs to supplement its speed, so that's why it runs Scarf 50% of the time. Um, but when it runs Choice Band or some other item, it really is more of a wall breaker, right? It wants to come in on slower mons. It wants to frighten out a Galarian Slowking or a Slowbro or a Blissey or like whatever, and then just break through with these massive knockoffs, or Leaf Blades or whatever, right? It uses these entry points on slow Pokemon, right, to get these big hits off rather than really being that revenge killer, right? It's a completely different playstyle than something like a Weavile, who again has like similar has it's a similar strong physical attacker with that spams knockoff, right? Weavile's playstyle is much different than Kartana's just because of the speed threshold, right? And uh and Blacephalon I think is similar. Again, it likes to come in on a Ferrothorn setting up Stealth Rock or Corviknight, you know, um trying to get off a defog and then you know, spamming its flamethrower, tricking a choice item, like whatever it's doing. And so like, and then of course, again, the differences in playstyle between a Tapu Koko, Dragapult, to Zeraora, like all these things. Now, I think the problem with this 110 is I don't think it really settled specifically until Gen 9, right? Like in Generation 8, the only real like relevant mons are Latios and Gengar, which aren't even OU. And they're exactly at 110 speed. Um, but and so like you can kind of see it there, but I think 110 really came into its own as a, this is the new speed tier. This is the new speed to have in Gen 10, or sorry, Generation 9. I'm thinking ahead. Generation 9, where Ogerpon came in, Iron Moth came in at 110, and and but beyond that, again, it's not even just about the ones that are at 110, those that just poke around it, right? Um, I think the most important one is Iron Valiant at base 116. Like this, of course, it has Quark Drive, right? So a lot of times it's speed booster, or it'll yeah, its booster energy will boost its speed, its highest. But why is that? Special attack is higher, right? You know, and of course it's you're running timid, right? So you run timid, but you run max special attack and timid, and then it boosts your speed. That just seems right, right? It seems right to do. But why is it so important? Like, why don't we see booster energy special attack? Because again, like those moon blasts and the close or not close combat, the aura spheres, like or focus blast, whatever you want to run, like they would hit so much harder, right? It's great. But the problem with running modest and getting a special attack boost is now your speed dips below 110. And now instead of being able to outspeed an Iron Moth or an Ogerpon, you can't, and you're going to get threatened by them and forced out. And so, like, this is so important for Iron Val that, you rarely ever see of a special attack booster Iron Val. It just doesn't really happen that often. And then you see another mon like Enamorus almost always running Choice Scarf because it's at 106 speed and it needs to try and outspeed these mons that are around base 110. Um, of course, you see specs every so often again, but that just changes its playstyle, you know, and that's the most important part, right? Like the playstyles are changed based on the speed tier, right? When Walking Wake runs a special attack boosting photosynthesis, right? It's usually just going to run Scarf. Then it gets kind of the best of both worlds. And at base 109 speed, it needs that Scarf to outspeed these mons, these base 110s, right? And then when it's and so like that again is really important. And so you can see how like in Gen 9, because of speed boost, like booster energy, quark drive, photosynthesis, the speed kind of gets muddied, but you kind of have to think of it at here's the base speed at +1, right? And that's something that competitive players have been doing forever is the speed tiers, like that's so important of knowing speed tiers, not really like what's faster at this current moment. It's just knowing the speed tier, like what's faster if this is choice scarf and this is at +2, like. And so in this case, a lot of times you look at the base speed and just assume everything's got a +1 boost uh, because you look at these mods: Iron Moth, Iron Valiant, Enamorus, um, uh, what's it called? Walking Wake. Like these mods are running either a speed boosting booster energy photosynthesis or choice scarf a lot of the times, and so you can kind of think of it as still base 110, just at +1. And so again, it comes down to play style, right? These mons above 110, Darkrai, Cinderace, um, Iron Valiant, like they're they're more of these faster revenge killers. Those below, Iron Treads, um, at 106 speed. Garchomp is there too, although that's obviously really running a lot of more scale shot sets. So that's more of a setup sweeper than anything. Mioscarada is again another revenge killer there. Um, and so, those lower than 110, even just by a little bit, become more of these wall breakers. Even like Walking Wake, when a lot of times it runs those booster speeds sets under Sun, right? But even without that, right, or without that, it becomes more of a wall breaker, right? It becomes more of like Specs Hydro Pump, right? That type of thing. More so than a Let's Revenge Kill. So, and that makes sense, right? Like the faster you are, the more mons you outspeed. But again, the change happens between Revenge Killer and Wallbreaker kind of at 110. Again, look at Iron Moth. It's kind of in between. Sometimes it's revenge killing, sometimes it's trying to wall break. And Ogerpon, I think, is even better because, of course, um, the Iron Moth is going to be running Speed Booster a lot of the times. Ogerpon, is it a revenge killer? Is it a wall breaker? And the answer is both. And you could say that about Val. You could say that about other mons that are not at 110, but Ogerpon really is on that edge. And I think it's really kind of this defining factor of OU at the moment is Ogerpon, right? It's such an important mon, and it's at base 110, and kind of defines the speed threshold in certain ways. So I think 110 speed is here to stay if I had to guess for a bit. Obviously, Beast 100 stayed for 7 generations. I know power creep has been ridiculous these past 2 generations, and I guess we'll see. But I think with how much they messed with speed in terms of quark drive and photosynthesis, I think speed will honestly settle a bit in Generation 10 unless there's some gimmick that has to do with speed. But overall, I think Gen or 110 is kind of here to stay for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, let me know your thoughts on this, whether base 110 is an important threshold anymore, or really at this point is kind of the Wild West. Um, I think there's an argument for both, but I really do think when you're playing the game, the feel of it is that 110 is more of an important threshold than 100. But let me know your thoughts. And yeah, hope you have a great day.